Strength training for strength and strength training to accompany your sport are ever so slightly different, because when I'm programming people to strength train and they have to practice their sport deliberately on the weekend and try and develop this skill, then fatigue is always in the back of my mind, right? So you could have most of your strength training is done with about 80% of your 1 rep max. To develop a certain movement, bench press for example, you might want to do maybe 75 repetitions a week at about 80% of your max. If you're near the season as an athlete, you don't want to be spiking fatigue if on the weekend you have to, like I said, practice deliberately. So there's a few tricks of the trade that you can have the same training volume but a little bit less fatigue. Let's have a little look. So on the bench press here I have 100 kilos, which happens to be exactly 80% of my 1 rep max. And like I mentioned before, this is where most of your strength training will take part. It might go a little bit higher, it might go a little bit lower, but probably average about 80%. So if a high volume strength training session said 5 sets of 5 at 80%, your training volume is 25 repetitions at 80%. And if you're looking for about 75 repetitions per week, that's, let's just say Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 5 sets of 5 at 80%. But 5 sets of 5 is no joke, and it might cost you some fatigue. And if that last session of the week on the Friday causes you some fatigue, and the next day you're riding, or like I said before, trying to practice your sport deliberately, you could do without having fatigue in your body whilst doing that, especially if you're close to the competition season. The further away you are from the season, the less concerned I am about fatigue. So I'll show you 5 repetitions on this 100 kilos. So that was quite difficult. I probably could complete 7 or 8 repetitions with that, but I'm putting it back at 5 deliberately to save some work in the tank, save some energy in the tank. And I would allow full recovery between 3 and 5 minutes so I can repeat that, okay? So if I had 30 seconds recovery and went back to it, I might only manage 3. If then I had another 30 seconds to recover, I might manage 2 and then 2. So even though your effort would still be there, your performance would go down. And with strength training, we want to repeat the performance over and over again. So take as much recovery as you want and then do another set of 5. 3 to 5 minutes recovery is totally fine. So 3 sessions of 5 sets of 5, which is a high volume session, is going to cause some fatigue. So what you could do is distribute the volume slightly differently to have a smaller spike in fatigue, right? So you could do 8 sets of 3 repetitions with 80%. And the overall volume for this exercise on that session would be 24 repetitions. It's not 25, but I think we can agree it's quite similar. So over the week, doing 3 sessions of 8 sets of 3 repetitions, that would be 72 reps rather than 75. Pretty similar, but your fatigue is going to be less because you're not going as close to failure in each set. The only downside to doing 8 sets of 3 as opposed to 5 sets of 5, it's going to take you longer. And I'll show you a set of 3 with 100 and you'll see how much easier it is than a set of 5. So the last 2 repetitions, repetitions 4 and 5, do require a lot more energy, hence the bigger spike of fatigue you'll get from doing 5. Also 8 sets of 3 repetitions gives you a better quality of repetition because each set, the quality is going to be really high because you're not going anywhere near fatigue. Also because you're not going near fatigue, it's not going to stimulate the same amount of muscle growth. So if you're a weight class athlete like a boxer or something, this might make more sense. The long recovery in between sets sometimes bothers people. They say they get bored or they just feel like they're not working hard enough. So what you could do is introduce a different exercise. While the clock is ticking on the bench press, you could do something of opposing muscle group, something like a barbell row. If you had the opportunity to set up a different bar, for example, you could have it in front of you here, do a set of 3 or 5 with the bench press, take your time, move over and do a set of 3 or 5 with the barbell row. And the recovery is ticking on the bench press, you can do the barbell row, then the recovery is ticking on that. So you can introduce a second workout. Based on the data, you won't get the full strength benefit of each exercise. It's negligible though, it's only a little bit. So for the trade-off of saving half the time in the gym, I'm okay with it. So just as a recap, 3 sessions per week at 5 sets of 5 is going to cause a fatigue spike, meaning you might have some fatigue going into the weekend when you need to practice your sport deliberately. 8 sets of 3 would have less of a fatigue spike and the same training volume, but it takes a little bit longer. Just something to think about.